Amber?
Miss Stoger, my plastic surgeon doesn't want me doing any activity where balls fly at my nose.
Well, there goes your social life.
Clueless might look like a glossy teen rom-com filled with shopping sprees, Beverly Hills slang, and picture-perfect makeovers, but behind the glitter was pure Hollywood chaos. What audiences saw as effortless Valley Girl fun was actually the product of battles with studio executives, casting disasters that nearly changed the entire story, and accidents on set that cost real money. Careers were made, roles were lost, and fashion budgets spiraled into numbers bigger than some entire films. So today, we're diving into 15 hidden facts about Clueless that reveal just how wild this production really was. From near misses in casting to accidents that became comedy gold, each fact peels back another layer of Beverly Hills perfection. And trust me, the last fact, it'll make you look at this 90s classic in a completely new way. Real damage in the driving test. The driving test scene in Clueless has become one of the funniest parts of the film, but behind the laughter was a very real headache for the crew. When Cher scrapes against a white car during her disastrous road test, that wasn't a carefully staged stunt with a prop vehicle. Alicia Silverstone really did slam into a parked car on set. The impact left a visible mark, and the production had no choice but to pay for the repairs. Most directors would have yelled, "cut," and reshot the moment with a stunt driver, but Amy Heckerling saw the accident as pure gold. The startled reaction, the sudden panic, it all felt too authentic to throw away. So instead of hiding the mistake, she leaned into it, letting audiences believe it was planned all along. That decision gave the scene its raw, awkward charm. After all, what teenager hasn't thought they could handle driving, only to realize their confidence was bigger than their skill? Cher's cluelessness became cinema's comedy, and a banged-up white car became part of Hollywood history.
Ew! Get off of me! Ugh, as if!
Reese Witherspoon nearly played Cher. Before Alicia Silverstone became the face of Clueless, another actress almost slipped into Cher's designer heels, a young, relatively unknown Reese Witherspoon. At the time, she didn't have the star power she'd later build with films like Legally Blonde or Walk the Line, but she auditioned for Cher Horowitz and impressed casting directors enough that she came close to landing the role. In the end, Amy Heckerling felt Silverstone had something different, a natural mix of innocence, confidence, and just enough unpolished charm to make Cher lovable instead of unbearable. Witherspoon lost out, but in a twist of Hollywood irony, she later built her own empire playing a version of that same archetype, the privileged blonde who's way smarter than everyone thinks. So while Silverstone became the 90s teen icon, Witherspoon's rejection shaped her into the queen of early 2000s rom-coms. Sometimes losing one role sets the stage for an even bigger one. The closet computer almost didn't exist. One of the most iconic moments in Clueless comes early. Cher standing in her room, scrolling through a digital wardrobe system that matches outfits on her computer. For audiences in 1995, it felt futuristic, like a glimpse into the fashion of tomorrow. But what most fans don't realize is that the scene almost never made it into the movie. The technology needed to create that digital closet wasn't cheap, and studio executives didn't see the point. Why spend money on a special effects sequence about clothes when the story was supposed to be about high school? They pushed to cut it, arguing it was unnecessary. Amy Heckerling fought back hard, insisting the closet was more than a visual gag. It was a perfect metaphor for Cher, a girl who could turn even personal choices into something systematic and controlled by technology. In the end, Heckerling won the battle, and that short scene became one of the film's most memorable images, a fashion moment so ahead of its time that it predicted today's styling apps and online shopping. What nearly vanished as a budget cut became one of the details fans still remember most. Paul Rudd almost ended up as Murray. Today, it's hard to imagine anyone but Paul Rudd as Josh, Cher's grounded and slightly sarcastic former stepbrother. But believe it or not, Rudd originally auditioned for a completely different role, Murray, Dion's fast-talking boyfriend. At first, casting directors thought his laid-back charm might work as comic relief, but Amy Heckerling saw something else in him, something steadier. She decided he was better suited as Josh, the character who would balance out Cher's flighty personality. That single decision reshaped the movie's entire dynamic. Donald Faison brought wild, hilarious energy to Murray, while Rudd's understated wit made the romance between him and Cher surprisingly sweet instead of awkward. It's one of those sliding-door Hollywood moments. If Rudd had been cast as Murray, the love story at the heart of Clueless might never have worked. Instead, the casting switch turned out to be one of the smartest moves Heckerling ever made, and it helped launch Paul Rudd into the career we know today. Filmed in a rushed 40 days, Clueless might look polished and effortless, but the entire film was shot at breakneck speed. just 40 days from start to finish. That's barely over a month to juggle a huge ensemble cast, multiple wardrobe changes, tricky location shoots, and some of the most elaborate costume design ever seen in a teen comedy. There was no room for mistakes. If a scene didn't work, there wasn't time for endless reshoots or experiments. Actors had to trust their instincts, and Amy Heckerling had to make bold calls on the spot. That constant urgency gave the movie an energy that feels alive even decades later. The pacing, the performances, even the quick-fire dialogue all carry that done-in-the-moment intensity. Instead of slowing things down, the pressure created exactly the kind of restless, unpredictable vibe that matched teenage life. Ironically, it was the lack of time that made Clueless feel timeless. Jeremy Renner's infamously wrong audition. Before he became known for intense roles in gritty dramas and as a Marvel superhero, Jeremy Renner walked into the Clueless audition room, but from the moment he opened his mouth, it was clear something wasn't clicking. Renner brought his trademark intensity, the kind of brooding, working-class grit that would later make him perfect for The Hurt Locker and The Town. But in the pastel, high-gloss world of Beverly Hills teens, it was a total mismatch. Casting directors recalled his audition as almost jarring. While everyone else leaned into comedy, Renner's seriousness felt like he had wandered in from a completely different movie. It became a kind of industry in-joke, proof that even a talented actor can be the absolute wrong fit. Renner obviously went on to find his lane in Hollywood, but his misstep in Clueless is a reminder that timing and tone matter as much as talent. In another life, he might have been part of Cher's world, but thankfully, the film kept its breezy, satirical charm intact. Real Beverly Hills teens were the blueprint. Amy Heckerling didn't just sit in her office and imagine how rich kids in Beverly Hills might act. Before writing Clueless, she actually spent months observing real high school students in the area, how they talked, what they wore, even how they gossiped in the hallways. She studied their slang, their obsession with labels, and the way they'd argue about world issues with confidence, but very little actual knowledge. What she discovered was a mix of sophistication and naivety that fit perfectly with Jane Austen's Emma, the story that inspired the film. That research is why the dialogue feels so authentic, not just random teen lingo, but real phrases that made their way into everyday speech. Lines like "as if" and "whatever" weren't just funny. They became part of the culture because they were rooted in the way teens were actually speaking. It's this attention to detail that turned Clueless from a parody into something sharper, a satire that both celebrated and poked fun at Beverly Hills life. Heckerling wasn't mocking from the outside. She was holding up a mirror. Fashion budget outshined entire indie films. If there's one thing people remember most about Clueless, it's the fashion. Cher's yellow plaid blazer and skirt became an instant icon, but those outfits didn't come cheap. In fact, the costume budget for Clueless was bigger than the total budget of some entire independent films from the 90s. Designer Mona May treated every outfit like it was part of the storytelling. Nothing was random. Colors, fabrics, accessories, every detail was chosen to reflect the characters' personalities and social status. Cher's polished plaid, Dion's bold hats, Ty's evolving wardrobe, all of it told you exactly who they were before they even spoke. The yellow plaid suit alone went through multiple alterations and ended up costing more than a brand new car. It wasn't just clothing, it was character development stitched into fabric. And that investment paid off. The movie's fashion didn't just set trends, it created a visual language so strong that people still copy it decades later. Clueless started as a failed TV pitch. Before it became the movie that defined a generation, Clueless was actually meant to be a TV show, and a rejected one at that. Amy Heckerling originally pitched it as a series, but network executives didn't get it. They thought a modern-day Jane Austen adaptation was too smart for teenagers, too literary, too niche. They shot it down without hesitation. Instead of shelving the idea, Heckerling reworked the script into a feature film. That's why the story feels so episodic, with moments that play almost like standalone episodes, a structure that later made it easy to spin into the Clueless TV series. What the networks dismissed as a weakness, Austen mixed with Valley Girls, turned out to be the movie's greatest strength. By ignoring the gatekeepers and sticking to her vision, Heckerling turned rejection into revenge. Clueless didn't just prove the execs wrong, it became one of the most beloved teen films of all time. the Haitian slip became comedy gold. One of the most quoted scenes in Clueless happens in debate class when Cher argues about immigration and passionately insists the Haitians need to come to America. The line is hilarious because it perfectly captures her sheltered, well-meaning cluelessness. But here's the twist. That wasn't in the script. Alicia Silverstone genuinely didn't know how to pronounce Haitians. When she said it wrong, the crew expected Amy Heckerling to correct her. Instead, Heckerling told them to keep rolling. She realized the mistake was better than anything written on the page. It wasn't an actress trying to be funny. It was an authentic slip that revealed Cher's worldview in the most natural way possible. That tiny accident turned into one of the defining moments of the film. Proof that sometimes the funniest, most memorable lines come when the actors aren't acting at all. Aerosmith music videos launched Silverstone. Alicia Silverstone didn't land Clueless through the usual audition grind. Instead, she was discovered in the most 90s way possible, by starring in Aerosmith music videos. Her appearances in Crying and Amazing made her an instant MTV icon. She played the rebellious, emotional teen with just the right balance of innocence and edge, and those performances caught Amy Heckerling's attention. When casting for Cher, Heckerling saw Silverstone in those videos and realized she had the exact mix needed. Spoiled, yet likable, shallow, yet secretly sharp. She could play someone who lived in a designer bubble while still making audiences root for her. Rock and Roll ended up launching one of the decade's most memorable movie careers. Without Aerosmith, Cher Horowitz might have looked very different, and Clueless might never have had its perfect leading lady. Sarah Michelle Gellar turned down Amber. Before she became the legendary Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Sarah Michelle Gellar was nearly part of Clueless. She was actually offered the role of Amber, Cher's snarky, fashion-obsessed rival. But here's the twist. Her team turned it down. At the time, Gellar was trying to build credibility as a serious actress, and her reps thought Amber was too small of a role to showcase her talent. They didn't want her stuck playing a shallow sidekick in a teen comedy. Instead, the part went to Elisa Donovan, who leaned all the way into Amber's petty one-liners and over-the-top personality. Ironically, Donovan's performance turned Amber into one of the most memorable characters in the movie. And Gellar, she found her big break anyway, just a couple years later by slaying vampires on TV. It's one of those Hollywood what-ifs, proof that sometimes passing on a role doesn't end your career, it just sends you down a different path. Christian's character was based on real people. Christian, Cher's charming crush who turns out to be unavailable, could have easily slipped into cliché. In the wrong hands, he might have been written as either a joke or a stereotype. But Amy Heckerling based him on real men she knew in Beverly Hills. Stylish, sophisticated, and magnetic. The kind of guys who could glide through high society while keeping their own romantic lives separate from the women who adored them. That's why Christian feels authentic rather than cartoonish. He wasn't written as a punchline, he was written as someone you'd genuinely meet in that world. He's kind, funny, and confident, which makes Cher's infatuation completely believable, and her eventual realization all the more relatable. For 1995, this was surprisingly progressive. Christian wasn't defined by tragedy or mockery, but by charm and likability. Instead of being the joke, he was simply part of the story. A reminder that Clueless was always a little smarter and a little more thoughtful than people expected. The soundtrack almost sounded totally different. The Clueless soundtrack is legendary. Radiohead, Counting Crows, No Doubt, all the bands that perfectly captured that mid-90s moment when alternative rock was sliding into the mainstream. But that wasn't the original plan. In the early stages, the soundtrack leaned heavily toward generic pop and dance tracks, the kind of bubblegum background music that would have dated the film instantly. Music supervisor Karen Reckman fought hard to change that. She knew the movie needed songs that felt fresh, sophisticated, and a little rebellious, music the characters themselves would realistically listen to. By swapping in alternative rock, she gave Clueless a cultural edge. That decision paid off. The soundtrack didn't just support the movie, it became part of its identity. The songs elevated scenes, deepened the characters, and cemented Clueless as more than just a teen comedy. It became a time capsule of the 1990s. Without that musical shift, Cher's world might have looked the same, but it never would have sounded as cool. Clueless wasn't just another teen comedy about shopping sprees and high school crushes. It was a chaotic mix of accidents, near misses, bold choices, and outrageous fashion that somehow came together to define an entire decade. A rejected TV pilot turned into a cultural phenomenon. A mispronounced word became comedy history. Casting twists, rushed schedules, soundtrack battles, and even real car accidents all added to the magic. What could have been a forgettable rom-com became a time capsule of the 90s, one that still influences fashion, slang, and teen movies today. It proved that sometimes the smartest ideas are the ones everyone else dismisses, and the best moments happen when nothing goes according to plan. So the next time you watch Cher strut across Beverly Hills, remember, behind that flawless plaid was chaos, luck, and genius. And if you want more behind-the-scenes stories that reveal the wild truth about your favorite classics, hit that like button and subscribe, because we've only just scratched the surface. Drop in the comments your favorite movie and we will cover it in our next video.